individuals and places through the city that had made significant contributions to the city, but they were all African Americans. And so once that information was assimilated, she then presented it to the Mobile and the Alabama Historical Societies. They validated it and vetted the information, and then at that point the trail was born. And she was fortunate at the time because we had an African American mayor, Samuel Jones. We had an African American county commissioner, Merceria Ludgood. And then William was on the council, so he had the ears of the other 6 council people. And so she didn't have to spend time justifying why a trail would be a benefit to the city. She spent all her time on doing the development of the trail. And so we start right here because it was back in 1702 that King Louis XIV from France contracted with 2 guys out of Quebec, Canada. And they were the Iberville and Bienville brothers. And he said, hey guys, what I want y'all to do is to find me a shortcut to New Orleans. So they set sail from Quebec, Canada, and they actually ended up in Pensacola. Well, the Spanish occupied Pensacola, and so they headed west. And then if you've ever been out in our Gulf, it's a little tricky. They took a little too sharp of a return to the right, ended up in Mobile Bay, which is just 2 blocks over, and then ended up 27 miles north of Mobile, you know, in a place we call Chestang, Alabama. 27 mile North Bluff. So they set up shop there, and that's where the first city was. They were there for 9 months. A great flood came about, and that flood pushed them back to this location. And this was an onion field. It was very flat, and it was occupied by the Marvilla Indians. They were warrior Indians, but the soldiers had gunpowder, so they overtook this area, and this became the first city. Then in 1723, they bricked this entire fort, and they used the labor of slaves, Indians, indentured servants. There were Masons, Freemasons of color. Okay, they were colored. We were colored back during that time, but they were Masons, and a lot of them were not slaves. They had papers, and there were whites and Indians. So they bricked this entire fort. Now, what we see over here today to the left is a replica of the original city. This was done in 1976 for the bicentennial celebration of the United States, and but it's the identical make of the city, except that it's 1/3 the size of the original city. And so, you know, it went further back south than what we have here, but if you ever go in there, that's just the way the original city was. And please stop me and ask questions.
At one time, I remember this in school, Mobile was known as movable. Did you ever heard that?
Mobile?
Yeah, mobile.
Yeah, that's what they would call it, Marvilla.
Yeah.
Marvilla. And then, you know, if you go to Boston, you know, we say the calf went down the path to take a bath.
Yeah.
You go to Boston, they say the calf went down the path.
Yeah.
So it's like Mobile. See, now we spell it M-O-B-E-E-L.
Yeah.
Mobile.
Yeah, but they say
instead of mobile.
The Indians would get set up here, and the whites would come and run them off. They started calling it movable.
Yeah, well, you know, they ran them out of the whole country ultimately, and they put them on the reservation. So, but the king, then being the gracious person that he was, the next thing that he did was that he sent a ship, and that ship had females on it, and those females he sent over, and I'm gonna have to move. No, he's coming around. No, I'm not ready to move just yet, but he's coming around. He's gonna make me move. Those females he sent over to marry the soldiers. Okay. Well, a lot of them did marry the soldiers, and they started to grow the community. Then there was a third ship to come along, and that ship came out of the Dominican Republic, and they were concubines. These ladies were concubines. They were African American ladies that came in, and it was considered sociably acceptable during that time that the wives of the soldiers would allow their husbands to have girlfriends as long as they were considered of a lesser social class. So that those original ladies were actually orphans from the Roman Catholic Church, and their chaperones were nuns. Okay, but because I guess the soldiers' wives were of a superior status, they labeled them as a lesser social class. Today, in my eyes, it would be a little different, because one group was orphans and one group were concubines, but that didn't necessarily justify one being better than the other, but that's the way it was. And a lot of those ladies lived just south of here in an area that we all know as down the bay, right?
Really?
Yep, that's what I'm from.
Down the bay. So,
amazing.
that area consisted of a lot of families with the names of Laurendine, Duretz, Chastain, Collins, Treniers, Juzang, all of those families. And then ultimately, a lot of them ended up and they moved to Mount Louis Island, which is down on Fowl River.
Okay.
And a lot of those families are still there today. Well, ultimately, you know, the children of the ladies, and either their fathers were French or Spanish with African American mothers, those children were called Creoles.
Oh yeah.
And so that's how we get the term Creole. And a lot of those families still live there today, and we're going to talk about those families as well again. So that's kind of how we got started. Now, when I do the tours, I add in a little trivia as well. And as you all know, this used to be City Hall.
Oh yeah.
And at the time, we were governed by a commission form of government that were elected from at-large districts. We had 3 commissioners in America. And then we had police chief, fire chief. All city administration was done in this building. Around on Government Street was the jail downstairs in the basement. And so 79, a flood came through. There was 6-7 feet of water down here, and they had to gut this building. They moved everybody out to West Mobile because they couldn't get in there because of the water damage from Frederick. And you remember over here used to be the county courthouse.
I remember that. Oh,
okay.
They tore that down.
They demolished it, and when they demolished it, the owner of the Mobile Press Register left $1 million to the city to establish a park. So this park was just established last year.
Okay.
And he wanted it to be a Mardi Gras park. So if you look, you'll see the Queen right here, and then the King is further down past that white insert there with the gold outfit on. And then this guy right here is Joe Kane, because he started the parades back after the Civil War. And so they always acknowledge Joe Kane. Now you'll see a billboard right there behind that little tree.
Yeah.
And because this is phase 1. So phase 2, on that billboard, you'll see a pavilion. And so the concept is that they're going to cover that to shield us from the sun and the rain with phase 2. And so this is kind of, and it's a very diverse park because, you know, we've got Mobile Carnival Association, which is the white Carnival Association, and then we have Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association that you were saying that your niece, Miss Thomas, was the queen. And so up front here, we've got the African American king, and then a little further down, you see the queen. See right here? So, it's a very diverse park. Everybody's represented. This guy here looks like Louis Armstrong, but he's just really representing the bands. Okay? So my only recommendation will be when they redo these statues, they put a little bit more color in that brother's skin up there, so we'll know for sure that he is representing the African American group. You know, and sometimes this becomes a challenge if I'm talking with someone not from Mobile, because they might say, "Oh, y'all still segregated? It's still white, black." Well, it's not about that. It's about tradition, family, legacy. And they're not knocking at our door, and we're not knocking at their door, and Mardi Gras celebrated at the same time, and you know, everybody's happy.
Let me ask you a question. What about the avenue, the Mardi Gras? They don't go there anymore?
Yeah, both days, Monday and Tuesday.
Is it big? Like
it's huge. It's huge. It's huge.
Okay.
Now, do you remember what used to be here before this hotel was here?
No.
Come on. You got to.
I don't remember.
It was here.
With what?
You don't remember?
What was it?
Sears and Roebuck.
Sears and Roebuck.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
All the way from the corner up to past this parking lot. You know, it was 2 stores, 2 stories high. All of this was Sears.
Yeah.
You could go in there and buy everything. Now Sears is about to go out of business. They've gone out of business in Mobile.
They're gone.
Yeah, because they probably replaced too many shovels that were 20 years old. You know, you could take back anything.
I was telling a friend, I was telling my wife, I had a guy I worked with, and we was in Grand Prairie, and he found some old tools on the street. Took him to the Sears, they gave him everything new.
That's right. That's right.
Sears won't do that no more.
No. So you remember when you were here, though, that whether you were buying socks or a hat or anything in between, you would get it off of Dolphin Street. There was Gafers, Hammers, Steins,
yeah.
there was Mesca's, there was Reese Brothers, there was Kaiser's, 2 Sisters, 1 Sisters, Zagabe's. All of those stores were on Dolphin Street.
You could go in Stein for $30 and get a suit.
That's right.
$30, D. And I mean, I ain't talking about no jive suit.
It was a nice suit.
For $30. And I had to go to Mesca's and get those Van Lawn shirts for less than $8 or $9.
That's right. That's right.
A cat could dress up and be clean and wouldn't fit $50.
So all of this changed in the 90s because when we were coming up, we had no malls, right? No Springdale Mall,
no.
And so now when you come down here, it's all restaurants, clubs, legal offices, real estate offices, banking, financial, and all of that changed. And we're going to talk about how and why we think it changed, okay, over the years.
Yeah.
Because there's like a couple of clothing stores, but not many.
Ain't nothing down here like it used to be.
No, and so all the stores, if you're going to shop, you're going to the mall, Springdale or Bel Air Mall, to buy your clothes, or to some of these outlets around here. But of course, here's the water, the state docks.
Oh yeah.
Convention Center, of course, and then we have the Maritime Museum and the cruise line that comes in with the ship. You remember what used to be here before the come on, I
don't remember.
You got to, because you had to come down here before me.
What was here?
The Banana Wharf.
I don't remember that.
You're right. There would just be crates of bananas out there all over the place. It'd be like hundreds of bananas.
And ships would load those bananas. They would pull those ships right up out here, and it may take a week to load that ship up.
Now they load them up. They load them train cars up with these things and drop them on the ship. See,
my God.
They just take a whole train car and just load them up onto the ship. You'll probably see something.
When I was a little boy, this was the area, and it was taboo to us.
Right.
I mean, this was taboo to us to be down here.
So right now, what they're getting ready to do, just for reference purposes, they're getting ready to put a lot of leisure activities on the water. Like by the Maritime Museum, they're going to have like restaurants and clubs and all kinds of entertainment where you can come down and enjoy the water and have, you know, fun right there. Right now, it's pretty much all business ships and loading things from Alabama State Docks, but it's getting ready to change, and they're putting bicycle routes down here so people can ride bicycles and making it friendly to walk in this area as well. So a lot of enhancements that are taking place, and that you'll see the results in the next couple of years because all these things have been approved, and it's going to happen. Got a lot of tourists coming to town. Mobile is a destination now.
Yeah.
And so when you bring people in, you got to have things for them to do, and people like to be on the water.
Now, you remember my brother Yet? And you remember my brother Yet? He told me when I was a little boy, they used to bring slaves in right here in Alabama.
You a good lead man. You a good lead man, because it's our first market. See? The slave market.
Oh, that's what my brother told me. Do you remember me telling you that?
Yeah, I knew it.
I didn't know my
Dock 2 blocks over. And then they would bring the illegal kidnapped people over.
Illegal kidnapped people.
Right. Over to this site. And they would come in shackles and chains. Okay?
Sure would.
And they would have traveled for 3 months.
Yeah.
Naked in the bottom of a ship.
They're talking about the Statue of Liberty.
And so when they came over, that's where they ate, that's where they slept, that's where they used the restroom. All in the bottom. They never, and so they would live in that environment for 2 to 3 months. Sometimes some of the ladies actually had kids
on that ship.
On the ship. in that hole. They say that the stench was so bad that the individuals up on the top wouldn't even come down in the bottom. It was just a horrific environment. I can't even imagine what that might be like, or if I could have survived in that kind of environment for that period of time. Those had to be some very strong-willed, determined people to live in that kind of, to live like that.
Like my wife and I was saying, I don't think I could have survived. I knew I wouldn't.
I don't think I could either, but they did, and so they would bring them to. This was actually the site, okay? But it's not necessarily the building. The building is kind of like a little replica.
Oh yeah.
But they would keep them in a building for maybe a week and remove all the abrasive marks from the shoes and the chain.
And try to sell them to hide.
And grease them up.
That's what they said.
And get them healthy. And then they would bring them out on a day like today. Maybe they would have passed flyers throughout the city that there's going to be an auction today at 11 o'clock.
That's right. Misused.
18 years old, all teeth, good health. And then they start the bidding, $100, $200, $300. Sometimes they would sell for as much as $1,000.
Really?
Now, the thing that was horrific was that these individuals, they didn't understand the language. They didn't understand the culture. And Mobile was known for lumber. The state of Alabama was known for lumber and seaport. So a lot of the slave plantations were in southern Georgia, Mississippi, Marion, Alabama, Selma, Alabama, places like that. So when that person bought them, they would leave with that individual, not knowing if they would ever see their wife or husband or children again.
I understand.
So it's very inhumane. Now, slavery had existed for centuries, but this was a new type of slavery. It was chattel slavery, meaning that they became the property of that individual for life. They bought them like they were a piece of furniture or a cow or something. So that was different than what had taken place as slavery in the past. But even with all of that said, we have to remain grounded, because the individuals back in Africa that were selling them were of the same color. There was one tribe capturing another tribe, and they would sell them for either weapons, money, or whatever resource they needed. And so that's what took place here. It was something that we never ever want to see again. And as you all know, from your trip to Montgomery, not saying that we were any better, but Montgomery had a much larger slave trading post, because they had a network of railroads, and the steamboats would go into Montgomery, and then they could disperse more individuals throughout the Southeast much faster and in much larger quantities.
But they stayed right around here. My brother told me this.
My understanding is that a lot of the slave trading posts were outside of the cities for some reason, and so this was a county.
Hey, Eric.
We're in the county now.
Eric, Montgomery Southeast, considered Southeast?
You mean where that where the museum was?
Yeah.
That was you know, that was actually the slave trading post, and I think that was outside of the city at that time too.
Is that considered the southeast of here, like southeast?
No, Montgomery is north.
It's north of here.
North of here.
Oh, got it.
Oh, that's what you meant. It's north.
Yeah.
But listen, when I was in Dallas, they were telling me some things about Alabama. It was the mecca of slavery. What I heard.
A guy that lived in this community, a white guy named Timothy Mayer. He made a bet.
My wife knows.
Made a bet with another individual that he could bring in 100 illegal kidnapped individuals. Now, in 1808, the Slave Act was passed, and the Slave Act said it was against the law to import anyone from outside of the country. And if you were found guilty by a jury, you could be hung.
They did hang some of them.
No, I don't know that. No? I don't think so.
I don't know, but that's what they.
No, they didn't. They hung a lot of blacks, but I don't know of them hanging anybody for importing anyone in.
Okay, well, see, you know, you hear stories. I don't know.
Yeah, so it might have been. I just have never heard anybody other than blacks being lynched back during that time.
Yeah.
So, he makes this bet, and because he thought that Alabama was going to succeed from the Union, all right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and so he goes out and hires this guy by the name of Captain Foster. Captain Foster then goes out and buys an 80-foot schooner, and then he hires 11 crewmen, and they call that schooner the Clotilda, okay? And so he leaves out to Port of Mobile with 70 yards of lumber stacked on the top as if he's going to Houston or South America to sell it, because we were known as a lumber state. But instead, what he and the 11 crewmen did was that they built 130 slots underneath the boat to house the individuals that they were going to bring back. So he gets to Africa, to a place called the Kingdom of Dahomey. And when he gets there, today, if you were to Google that, it's called Benin, B-E-N-I-N. That's the country, okay? First thing that he does is that he gets an interpreter, individuals in there.
Oh my God.
And so Captain Foster was somewhat shrewd. He asked the interpreter to get him 110 individuals, because he wanted to make sure that Timothy Meaher won that bet. In case some of them died, he had to kill or suicide. So he also said, listen, get them from 4 different tribes, because that way they don't speak the same language and he would have less of a chance of a mutiny. Yeah. So he did that. Then the other thing that he did, for every man he got a woman. For every little boy he got a little girl. And he eventually, they started to head back to the U.S. And federal authorities were on the alert to look out for them, because someone had alerted them that someone was trying to sneak in 100 illegal kidnapped individuals. Now, that's the Cochrane Africa Town Bridge that you see over to the right, that's suspended, that looks like ship mast. And so that bridge was constructed in 1995, and it was kind of with the idea of the Clotilda in mind when they did that. So they get back, Captain Foster gets here, and they offload the individuals right in that area, okay? And they take the Clotilda about 9 or 10 miles north of that and set it afire to sink it, because the stench was so bad that it would have been evidence that they brought those individuals into the country on that ship. Well, as you all know, we thought we found the Clotilda, and we're going to talk about that a little later, but those individuals, from my understanding, stayed out there in that area for a couple of weeks, and then finally they went to 3 different locations. Timothy Meaher's brother and one of his associates took them to Selma, Alabama. A third stayed here with Timothy Meaher on his plantation, because he was an entrepreneur and he had several different businesses, okay? Then a third was just scattered all around this area. Well, 1861, the Civil War breaks out, because they had actually attempted to arrest Timothy Meaher and Captain Foster. There was actually a case, but they never did take them to trial, because Civil War broke out and the federal authorities got out of here. Their life was not worth a nickel at that point, okay? Because this was pretty much deep in the Confederacy, and they were again looking at succeeding from the Union, and of course then slavery would have been legal again. So the Civil War breaks out, and then in 1863, as we know, Abe Lincoln executed the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, he, being the astute person that he was, realized that the Emancipation Proclamation was like what we know of as an executive order today. And we know what the current president has done to the executive orders that the previous president signed. He's rescinded them. In fact, they're about to rescind health care. Okay, they're wanting to. So he vigorously worked to get the 13th Amendment passed, which it did pass. And as a result of that, because the Emancipation Proclamation only freed the slaves in the 10 Confederate states. Well, when the 13th Amendment was passed, it abolished slavery throughout the United States. Well, all those individuals returned that were on the Clotilda, returned to this community, because all they wanted to do was to get back home. They never felt comfortable here. They never understood the culture, the language. They had come against their will, and they just wanted to get back home. But at the time, they didn't know that it had taken them 3 months to get here. They had no idea they were that far away. So they tried to get all kinds of money, but the government never saw them as being slaves because they were actually snuck in and they were not listed anywhere as slaves. Do you follow what I'm saying? So they had no idea. They couldn't justify them receiving money. So they all settled in this community, which we call Africatown.
Okay.
And when they settled here, there was one guy that could always keep things in order, always get people focused when they got off track. And his name was Cudjoe Lewis.
Wait, now repeat that again.
Cudjoe Lewis. That was his American name. Some people say Cujo.
Okay.
Cujo or Cudjoe. It's the same thing like calf or cough. Okay. Mobile or mobile.
Okay, no, I understand.
Yeah. So, and Cujo's African name was Kazula or Kazola. Okay. So, those individuals that were on the Clotilda, they went to Cudjoe and they said, listen, we want you to go to Timothy Mayer and negotiate something to get us enough money to get back home, because we won't. So he did. He went to Timothy Mayer. Timothy Mayer, being the slickster that he was, he said, I got a deal for you guys. Y'all come to work for me and you'll earn enough money to get back home. And they did. Well, every Friday when it came time to get paid, it was kind of like the old sharecroppers day. All the money went for food, shelter, and clothing. They never had any discretionary money.
Really?
So they ended up having to stay in this community. And they called it Africatown because they just brought all the resources that they knew from their culture of how to survive. And they lived in this community and made a way out of no way with things that they had, the talents that they brought with them. And so, as you all know, we thought we found the Clotilda.
Oh, yeah. They did.
And then they found out that it was not the Clotilda. Okay, so there's now another group that's out there diving and $1 million grant.
Really?
And that grant was earmarked to establish a welcome center. Now, that welcome center might be right here, that's why I stopped, or it could be somewhere else in the community. I'm in and out of meetings, but I never steal anyone's thunder.
Let me
So,
ask you another question, if I may, excuse me.
Yeah.
Why is the Elks in Plateau from here?
We're going to
We're
pass
gonna
by.
pass by.
I saw that church there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I understand,
Now,
because it's bringing
this
back
This
memories.
is the graveyard. Now, Chin Street is back here.
That's right, Chin Street. And so Chin Street separates Magazine Point from Plateau.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Chin Street is, when they say Magazine Point, Chin Street goes all the way back around by Sky Paper.
Okay,
And so all of that area was called Magazine Point.
Okay.
All of this area was called Plateau Africatown. Okay?
Okay, now look, when I was a little boy, there used to be a teenage club back there on the corner. of
Oh,
Chin
that's
Street.
before my time.
But listen. They had some electricians out here working during Sky Paper Company. And a knockout is what they knock out a box by big as a quarter.
Right.
Those kids found a way to take them knockouts and shave them down. And the man
And put them
running
in the
club
vending machine.
in the jukebox. And the man told his wife, "Oh, honey, we're gonna retire now." Them kids, they let that thing rest.
Yeah.
They opened up that thing, man. I was in it with them old knockouts. Them kids to shave down.
Right.
Hey, Eric,
So-
do you have air? Can you turn the air conditioner on?
Yeah.
sometime?
And then now in Shreveport, they got one prison in Louisiana. They call it Angola.
Oh, goodness.
Sweat.
They wanted the slaves to remember.
Hey, I'm in-
Graveyard.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see all the headstones facing this way. That's the Wilsons, the Kids, the Joneses, the Lewises, and so that's the new. We're gonna go over here and park in front of the old African
The whole
town.
Africatown graveyard.
Who are they? Who are these? Those surnames? Who are those?
Oh, just families that live out here.
Oh,
Yeah, the
okay.
kids, they're very. Oh, this is a church.
Right. And so this is the Africatown Cemetery, and this was established in 1876 by
Okay.
Cudjoe Lewis. So
Okay.
when Doris started this, the brush was like 6 feet tall. There were trees. You couldn't get in here. All right. You know, unfortunately, most of our cemeteries are not perpetual care, and they just get out of hand. Now, all the descendants of the Clotilda were buried in here. And if you notice, there's one headstone back there that's about 5 feet tall, next to that red stack of bricks. That was put there in memory of Cudjoe Lewis in 1992 when Mayor Michael Dow was in the city, and Fred Richardson, who was a councilman, and Dr. Yvonne Kennedy, who was, you talked about her, she was president of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. They financed it. And they put that there because Cudjoe Lewis was helped establish this cemetery back in 1876.
Is that right?
That's right. Now, he was the oldest surviving member of the Clotilda. He did not pass until he was 95.
He came in on the 14th.
Yeah. He did not pass until he was 95, and that was in 1935. And so he was a very mover and shaker in the community. So when Dora and them got here, she wrote a grant, and she got, when they finished, they had over 1,800 pink flags in here.
Question for you. A lot of these bodies never been identified.
So good question. So then what they did was they got a group and they went to probate court. They found the date, the name, the date they were born, the date they passed, the name of the person, in some cases what they died from, and their military experience, Buffalo Soldier, World War I, World War II.
True.
And then on our website, when the tour is over, I'm gonna give you a brochure. It gives you access to our website. There's a page out there, there's a folder called Africatown Cemetery. When you click on it, there's a spreadsheet in there. It has the name of every person that's buried in this cemetery.
Is that right?
Yeah, all 1,800 plus. Now, here's what they did not do and couldn't do because it's financially DNA. In other words, for me to validate that John Smith is in that site, I'd have to do. But they validated where bodies were, and then they validated from probate court who actually was buried in here. But I can't validate that person. See, if you look at that third row right there, there's no headstone on it, and there's no name on it. You see, you don't know who it is, and they don't know if it was because of financial reasons or what. But I used to take people walking through here, but our board for liability purposes stopped. And I forgot to tell you that we have a board that's 9 of us, and we all volunteer to do this. And so from a liability standpoint, they said I needed to stop. But you can come out here on your own and walk through here, and it's a very interesting cemetery. When Cudjoe Lewis and them first came here, they did not practice Christianity. They practiced voodoo because that was the religion in Africa and Haiti. And then ultimately they were converted to Christianity. But there's a lot of symbolism in the cemetery of voodoo.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. And so I'm beginning to read up on it, and then there's a group here that I'm gonna attend some of that sessions. But I got to get the elementary stuff down first, so I won't be so stupid when I sit in to find out.
Amazing.
I tell you what was crazy the other day. I was out. See that tree over there by the red? By that red brick style? It was a black cat over there. So that black cat just slowly walked all the way this way. And so I'm out here telling the story, and that black cat came all the way down the side, not running, just slowly walking. That black cat came under the sign. Now, he didn't come, you know, he came under, you'll see the little, and my paper was go 2-lane and cross the bridge. So, again, the next thing that happened after the $3.5 million grant, the city was awarded an $11.5 million grant to clean up 3 Mile Creek.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, so 3 Mile Creek starts right here to Delta and goes all the way out to University of South Alabama. Okay? And so with that $11.5 million grant, they're going to clean up 3 Mile Creek. But where this ends at the water down here, they're going to build a park for the community. They're going to have picnic tables, they're going to have boat slips, they're going to have fishing piers. All of that's going to be done by the National Park Service, and then it's going to be supported by the National Park Service. So it's not just going to be built and be pretty, you know, and we let things kind of slide off the grid. It will constantly be maintained by the National Park Service so that the community can have places to go to relax and enjoy. The community, they're sitting at the table. They come to the table with a resolution. They are good corporate neighbors, which was different from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. All they were about was making money, and they spewed a lot of toxic waste in the air, in the ground, and the water. And so, you know, when I was in the corporate world, and we would come to IP, you'd be over there for a couple of hours, or when you left, you could get your car washed free.
Really, that bad?
Yeah, because all that soot
All
and
that
stuff
stuff
would
was
be
on.
falling on your car. Well, we didn't know it at the time. We just thought it was cool to get your car washed free, you know. But what it was doing was cleaning your car off so you wouldn't take that stuff out into the community. But just think about the people that lived over here.
Breathing
All
this
that
stuff.
stuff was blowing into their land. They're breathing it. It's in the water system, etc. So this is Mobile County Training School.
I remember this as a kid coming up.
Yeah. So they're closed now. It's a junior school, and we're actually meeting with them next month to kind of determine the wording that they want for that marker. Okay, for their historical marker. So ultimately, it will be on the trail, and they've got a den down there with over 200 artifacts from the Lewis family that they have managed to keep and maintain throughout the years. I saw a washing machine in there that Cudjoe Lewis paid $2.78 for that it came out of. It wasn't Sears, but the washing machine is there. And $2.78, this was back in 1892, was a lot of money. Okay.
278.
$2.78, that's a lot of money in
I
1892.
can imagine.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll evolve and it'll be on the trail and we'll be able to stop in there. Now this community center is fairly new, and this came about when we changed the form of government from commission to district. And we had a representative out here, and the community said we would like to have a recreation center where our kids can play basketball and volleyball, and we can have meetings instead of them playing in the streets. And so that was built, and they named it Reverend Robert Hope. He was a reverend minister out here, pastor for a long time. And so, you know, at that point, the streets started being paved. They started getting sewer system, lights, everything. Because we had someone sitting at the table when the money was being allocated for the community. Whereas in the past, a lot of times those guys were not, sitting at the table, and so we didn't get our fair share of the money. It was going to other areas in the city. Even though these people were paying taxes, they wasn't reciprocating the benefits.
We knew how it went back then.
Oh yeah. So the other thing, there was a lady out here by the name of Miss Thelma Schamberger. I don't know if you knew her, but she delivered over 2,500 babies. She was a midwife.
Really?
And so right here, it was about 70 people out here a couple of weeks ago cleaning this up. You might not think it looked like it's clean, but you cannot imagine what it looked like before this, okay? And so they're cleaning this up, and they're gonna do a memorial in her honor because she delivered so many babies during her time. And I'm gonna stop right here because on this green space, there was a guy that came to Mobile, and he got off the railroad track. The railroad track is at the end of this street. That's where the GM&O train used to come. And so he got off and was walking down this street. Miss Schamberger and her dad saw him, and then you know how we are. Who are you? Where you from? And he told them the story, and they put him up for a couple of nights. Then they rented him a home. Then he built a house right here on this street, right here on this lot right here. And on the bottom floor was his office, and upstairs was where his family lived. His name was Dr. James Franklin. You know him, Dr. Franklin. So that was my grandfather.
Really?
Yeah, so this is where his first office was. Now, I never lived out here because when I knew him, you know, he had that 9-bedroom house over there on Ann Street, that big house. So I never lived out here, but this is where he first came to and started practicing medicine. And we'll talk about him a little later, but I wanted to point that out to show you.
Now, who was he to your daddy?
He was my mother's father.
Oh, your mother? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, my mother's father. That's the way my daddy got out the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
That was his ticket out the bottom.
Your dad was a real nice guy.
Yeah.
He always treated me good.
Yeah, that was his ticket out the bottom. You know, there's 3 churches out here. There's Yorktown right here. Hopewell is around the corner.
Yeah.
And we're going to go right here to Union. And this was our Mother Mercy. This was a Catholic church, and they had a little school there. Went to the 8th grade up until like 65 or 66. And I honestly believe if it wasn't for these churches, this community would be flat. Gone. This is what keeps this community intact. Because it used to be about 3,500 families out here. It's less than 900 now.
Really?
Yeah.
Moving away.
Yeah, you know, kids aren't coming back to this kind of environment.
Man, I remember the time on Sunday
That's
evening.
Elks. Yeah,
you couldn't get in there.
Couldn't park in that lot.
And they, I think the barbecue sandwich was like 75 cents.
Yep, honeybee.
A meal was about 30 cents.
And so there's over here they're gonna put Legacy Lane, and they're gonna have memories of the individuals off the Clotilda and the Buffalo Soldiers from this community. Yeah.
I tell you what, I would love to keep up with that when they find that shit.
Oh yeah, you gonna know about it. I promise. Let me tell you something. If that's really the Clotilda out there, it's gonna be the greatest historical discovery of this century. All right. So there's already this guy Common. He is a rapper. He's doing a series on the Clotilda that's gonna be on television.
Oh really?
Yeah. I came out here a couple of weeks ago with a group that's gonna start doing many historical educational programs on communities throughout Alabama. They're going to be in Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, Mobile, and they're going to do these educational series throughout the South. And so we brought them out here, took them on the tour. We had Reverend Derek Tucker opened up the church, and we went in there. They're going to do some, so it's a lot of stuff happening.
This is Reverend Tucker's church?
Yeah, he's the pastor now. He's
Okay.
So, back in when Cudjoe Lewis and them first came here, they were practicing voodoo, and they got converted to Christianity. And the first church they worshiped at was in Tomanville, and then they worshiped at Stone Street, okay? And then they came here and established Union. Now, the first two churches faced the bridge. And then I guess as this expanded, it used to be Bay Bridge Road, now they call it Africatown Boulevard. As it went from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, they faced the church this way. But the point I want to make is that in the newer cemeteries, you know, all the headstones face the west, where the names in the old cemetery, they all face the east.
I didn't know that.
And so the concept was that the first 2 churches faced the east, all the cemetery headstones faced the east, and the idea was that they always wanted to get back home. And he helped organize Mobile County Train Station. He was really dedicated to the community during this time. So if y'all stand up there, I'll take a picture of y'all and I can send it to you.
It's amazing, man. This has been a wonderful tour.
I told you it wouldn't.
I'm gonna take you back to scenic route instead. Normally I go to interstate. Because you can identify with so much of this, I'm gonna go back a different
I appreciate
route.
you, man.
Yeah.
I can tell anybody to take this tour.
I'm gonna go back a different route. Now this is something, you know, that we're struggling with right now is what we call economic injustice. And because so many chemical companies, paper companies, and they just spew all kind of toxic waste in this community.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this tour about a month ago, and this family, they said, Eric, you know, you bring up a good point. Do you know that whenever there's a hurricane or a tornado threat, you know what they do with all the railroads from downtown? You know, the cars? They back them up right here. Right as soon as we go under the bridge. So they back up all of those tanks with all that chemical stuff on them and park them here because they don't want them on the water.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but the thing is that if the wind blow over those tanks, those train cars with all that chemical stuff,
It's gonna be over here.
it's going to wipe out the community.
Yeah. But you know, back then they didn't care.
Right, they still don't.
They still don't.
They still
That's
don't.
what he's trying to do.
So, you know,
being so
they have groups out here now that's kind of monitoring that stuff. And so they went to the regulators and they said, you got to stop doing that. They would park them right over here. All along here, they would bring those trains and just leave them until the weather threat was over. They said, you got to stop that. You're going to wipe out our community. So those are the kind of things that we just have to be conscious of that's going on today. You remember what used to be right here, don't you?
no.
You know? Come on.
No, I don't really.
Dairy Fresh. Did you ever come out here? That's where.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is where I did that job at D.
Okay.
On Irving, right down the street. I did a job for a guy, Maurice Monk.
Okay. Over here?
No.
You don't? Wait, I tell you. Hayes Davis.
Hey,
Oh my God.
Best hot sausages in the world.
Yeah.
Listen, them hot sausages and them pork patties. Hayes Davis right here.
Right there.
And that was just the stockyard.
That's right. Exactly.
They call this the stockyard.
My mama had red beans and rice and hot
Oh,
sausage
Lord,
and cornbread
man.
every Saturday.
Get out of here.
Oh yeah, that's what we had on Saturday every
Red
week.
beans, rice, and hot sauce. We take them and
Yep, that was it. That was Hayes Day. They were so good they were killing us.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's why they don't make them no more, I guess.
Hayes David.
Oh.
Here's the stockyard.
Yep, that's it. Now, hopefully we'll have this area on the tour in a year or so. It's called Lewis Quarters. So down this road, there's a cul-de-sac back there, and there's about 5 or 6 homes, and most of them are descendants of the Lewis. They still live in this area. This is their homestead. And so I don't like to go down, I don't think it's proper for me to go down there all the time with a tour, but we're working on getting them on the tour and would have a marker back there and have it set up. But they refused to move when these lumber companies moved in. They tried to move them out. They said, we're not going anywhere. This is our homestead. We've been back here since the 1800s. Y'all know who used to own this, right? Dolores, you know who used to own this? You know who used to own this lumber yard?
Oh, Stimson.
Yeah. That family owned it. They sold it to the Canadians recently.
Yeah.
But this was their lumber yard. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, so this is Conception Street Road, and this is 3 Mile Creek right here.
Oh, yeah.
Dolores, did I come this way with y'all before?
Yeah.
I did. I brought you this way. Okay. So this is 3 Mile Creek, and it of course starts back at the Delta, and then it rolls all the way through, all the way to behind the dump, all the way by Roger Williams Project, all the way out to West Mobile. So they're gonna clean that up all the way, and then they're gonna have things like kayak racing. They're gonna have bicycle walking routes, all of this Delta, all the way out to Langham Park.
I hadn't been on here since I was a kid.
That's right.
Since I was 8, 9 years old.
So this was the only way. Well, initially you couldn't get to Mobile. You'd have to go through through Tomanville, because all of this was swamps.
Is that right?
Yeah, back when Cudjoe Lewis and them came, all of this was swamps. There was no Telegraph Road. There was no Conception Street Road. You'd have to go all the way through like Stone Street to get to Mobile, and then finally they kind of filled this in.
Is that right?
So that there's Conception Street Road and then Telegraph Road. And you can see it's still swamps if you look over there.
Oh, yeah.
All of this, eventually, I think all of this will be, I don't know why these people dump these tires. Yeah, that's terrible. Eventually it's going to be riverfront property though. They're going to fill all this in and probably build condominiums and homes because you're so close to downtown.
Very close. And since these freeways, it was a long ways when I was a boy coming up.
Oh yeah.
But with these freeways now, you ran Pritchard from downtown.
Exactly.
10 minutes, you could be in Pritchard.
And that's this I-65 will take you right there.
My God. This is amazing.
Of course, you remember A.F. Owens and Orange Grove,
Oh, yeah.
largest housing development in the city.
Yeah.
Frederick came through here in '79, the hurricane, and then several other hurricanes after that. This area kept flooding, and they finally moved everybody out. Then they came back with the Hope 6 project and renovated these homes. And so they made them income-based homes. And then up front, we're gonna see some condominiums. And then they have some assisted living facilities. And it is really a beautiful place right now to live. It's a great place.
I've been going a long time.
Yeah, it's a great place to live. It's very quiet. You don't hear anything negative about anything. It seems that everybody is very happy and content with living in this community.
Now, this is a train station here.
GMNO building, that's
When
right.
I was a little boy, oh man, that was big time.
Because they didn't have planes then. Wasn't nobody flying in the Mobile. If you came here, you were coming on the train.
That's the only way. The airport was there, but it wasn't for us.
The train.
Man, this is a small world.
So that's the condominiums. The other buildings are assisted living. And again, it's just like a real nice place. It's different income levels.
Really?
Living in there, and they maintain it very, very well.
That Bishop State is right here, ain't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're gonna pass. You know, none of the school wasn't here during that time. That
No,
was,
no, no, it
this was
wasn't.
all residential.
Oh, that's Stone Street Church. What is that?
Aimwell.
Aimwell. Stone Street is up here.
That's right.
That's Tunstall.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Remember Reverend Hale used to be the pastor there? Reverend Hale. He was hit by a car and killed. I tell you who killed him. Remember a white barbershop? He had a barber in there called Bunny. And Bunny hit Reverend Hale and killed Reverend Hale one night. Yes, sir. Yeah,
So,
this is Hardy Mary School.
right. So this is Johnson and Allen mortuary.
Oh, yeah.
So it closed last year and a half ago. The last living descendant of the initial family, Mrs. Gray, passed.
So
And
what they from Birmingham?
actually, they were from Virginia.
Virginia.
It was the Allen family, and they opened this funeral home back in the 1890s,
Really?
and they were free colors. They came out of Virginia.
Now, what exactly?
You were just African American, but you were free. You were colored, but
free color,
free.
okay.
You wasn't a slave. They never were slaves. They had their papers as being free.
Isn't that something?
And so they opened the funeral home, and you know, provided a lot of jobs. And of course, Mrs. Allen started a school right behind Hardy Mary called Josephine Allen Institute.
Oh, yeah.
So it was named after her, and she was very good friends with Booker T. Washington, president of Tuskegee,
Is that right?
and George Washington Carver. They used to come here. See, the Allens were very elite African Americans. They had a big house in the city and a big house down in Codeine near Dauphin
I
Island.
know it's what it is.
All right, so Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, A.F. Owens, all these guys used to go fishing, and they would stay at their summer home while they fished. And because of that relationship, a lot of students at Josephine Allen got to go to Tuskegee, graduated, and became very successful people throughout the United
Now,
States.
who just closed down?
Just closed down, and there's rumor that a mortuary out of Tennessee is in the process of opening it up.
Now, this Tunstall Church here.
That's right. This is Stone Street Baptist Church. It's the oldest Baptist church in the state of, that I named it after him. It's the oldest Baptist church in the state. I didn't say oldest African American church. It was established in 1806, 13 years before Alabama even became a state.
Really?
Yep.
Now,
And
this is the library.
we're gonna go over there next. So check this out. So when they start like 66, 65 in that area.
Really?
So they get down to jail, they all in jail, and this one officer comes downstairs and he sees these nuns and he says, "Who are these ladies? What are they doing in here?" Somebody said, "Oh, these are nuns from Most Pure Heart of Mary." And he said, "Oh, we can't have them in here. We got to let them out." So he goes upstairs, get the key, come back down, open the door, and the nuns looked at it and they said, "We're not going to everybody go." That's how committed they were, you know. So
everybody go.
right, so Dora was the girl, you know, and we're double first cousins. I didn't tell you the reason we're double first cousins because our dads were brothers and our moms were sisters. So that's the double first cousin thing. Both of the girls were Dr. Franklin's daughters, and then, you know, my dad and his brother, they came out the bottom. So
Is that something?
that's how they got across the avenue.
I didn't know y'all came with the bottom.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know.
Chinkapin and Plum.
I know exactly what y'all
Yeah,
got. Well,
yeah.
are y'all kin to the Dailies? That where they came from? Chinkapin from?
Kinda, yeah.
Y'all,
yeah,
I think y'all
so.
kin to the Dailies.
Yeah. Mr. Lovett lived on the other side.
But
Him
they
and my
go
daddy used to argue about who lived closest to the dump. One front yard was in the dump and the other backyard was in the dump.
Man, that
But
goes
they all
way
elevated themselves, you know, out of the
That
community.
goes way back.
So, as you know, there used to be St. James and Pritchard, St. Joseph, down Maysville,
Yeah.
Peter Claver down the bay,
Yeah.
and they all fed into the high school back here.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, all of those schools closed.
Yeah.
Hardy Mary High School closed in '68
Yeah.
under one umbrella, and they all became SD Bishop State during her tenure before she passed. She was able to convince the Department of Education and legislature to do that. Y'all remember Mobile Gas used to be right here?
Right here. Right
All right. So here's the deal: when they moved out on Dolphin Street,
Yeah.
you know, that used to be the Catholic boys' home. That's where they.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so, but when they were here, and when they moved, they said, you know, we'd like to give this to the community as a park. Well, nobody knew except for a few people that on the back part of this lot, they had buried big barrels and containers of toxic waste.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
And so they said, you can't give this to the community. These kids will die from cancer. There used to be a tar ditch over there. They probably was dumping stuff in that tar ditch as well.
So, there used to be a creek right here.
That's right. They called it the tar ditch.
Sure did. I go way back.
I know. So people like Dora. Isho. Dr. Isho, Dora, Gary Cooper, and some other individuals in the community fought Mobile Gas for the years about giving this to the community as a park. They said, you need to clean this up. And it was just 3 years ago that they had this whole place fenced off with paper. And,
Is that right?
And they finally removed all of those barrels of contaminated waste from underground. And then they opened it up. And you see those benches?
Yeah.
Each one of those benches are named for like Dr. Isho, Gary Cooper, Dora Finley. For they stayed with this thing for about 10 years, saying that we're not gonna let you make this a park until you clean it up.
Let me ask you another question. You remember Billy Cooper?
Yeah, Billy.
Where Billy at?
Billy died, and
really?
you know, when his daddy passed, he ran the funeral home. Billy and his wife ran Christian Benevolent.
Billy, the youngest boy.
No, the youngest boy was Mario. Then there was Jay, who became the attorney and Mayor Pritchard.
AJ.
And then Billy, and then Gary.
Well, now me and Billy went to the army together, Montgomery together.
Okay, so Billy was the second oldest boy.
Now Billy died.
Yep, he died. The good. One Fisher's Alley. You know, we had 4 movie theaters on this street. Lincoln,
right?
and Fisher's Alley used to be right next to Lincoln.
The
Booker T.
Lincoln.
Used to be a pawn shop right here.
So did the Ace.
Yeah. Record stores. There was a paint store, an appliance store.
David Avenue Supply.
That's right.
David Avenue Supply.
There was Suda Hayes grocery store. All these were businesses. There was only about 10 houses on the street. Urban Renewal wiped all of these out.
And boy, you hit the avenue.
It'd be somebody on it all day, 24 hours a day.
All night.
Every time, it was always some cars and people walking up and down the avenue.
Yes, sir.
I think these 2 houses are original. They were always here, right here.
Now, this is my church here, Dave Patton.
Dave Patton.
He gave the church this house, I think.
He did. And so when he built this house, you know, Dave was riding around Mobile with a wagon and a horse, hauling dirt throughout the city. He became one of the richest entrepreneurs in the city. He built, laid the foundation for Murphy High School, laid the foundation for Alabama State Docks, laid the foundation for Sanger Theater.
And they don't want them to know that.
And he built this house, and this is a huge house.
I've been in it.
In the 1900s. I've never been in it. I'd like to go in it. Lincoln University in Philadelphia, and then he decided to go to med school at University of Michigan in Detroit. And when he got there, they wouldn't let African Americans stay in the dorm. They put him in the boiler room.
I can imagine.
And so he had his trunk that he brought his clothes in, and he had a cot and a night lamp. And that's where he stayed and studied for 4 years, finished second in his class. Now, what I never got a chance to ask him or my mama, because it just wasn't on the radar at that time, he initially started practicing in Evergreen, Alabama. Why would he come to Evergreen? Why wouldn't he go to Montgomery or Mobile or Birmingham or somewhere but Evergreen?
Let me tell you a story I heard about your granddad. They said he saved a white woman's life, and they ran him out of town because he seen a white woman undressed.
And he touched her. And so by the time the story, by the time the story got from ABC to D, D didn't know that he was a physician. All they knew was that a black man had touched a white woman.
Yeah, he saved a life, they said.
He saved a life, and the lady's husband actually came to Dr. Franklin and said, get your hat, your coat, and your medical bag. I need to put you on the train right now. There's a mob coming to kill you.
Yes, sir.
And the husband knew he could not control the mob because they were lynching people, as you all just found out, for any reason.
I heard that when I was a little boy.
And so he comes and that's the story about him walking down the street, and Miss Thelma Schamberger sees him and her dad.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how he got to Mobile and started. But what I never found out is how he got to Evergreen. Why of all places? Because it was country. It's country today.
Well, is
It's
that why
Evergreen.
that why he saved the woman's life there?
Yeah,
They say he saved that white
Evergreen.
woman's life, and they, regardless of that, they wanted to kill him.
that's right. So when he opened office here, a few years after that, he died. Okay, he was on his way to make a house call. Then he was 86 years old, still
86.
practicing medicine. And when they closed Heart of Mary, there was a nun down there by the name of Sister Alberta. And he was a member of Heart of Mary Church. And so all those nuns went to him as a doctor, and they liked him. But there was one nun who taught biology that was really fun to him. So when they closed the school, she goes to South Alabama and becomes a doctor.
Is that right?
She comes back and starts to practicing in his office, seeing his patient, because he had a large patient base. And then, during that time, they would see his
Is that
patient.
right? Yeah.
Have him clip to laugh, smoke them John Ruskin cigars,
Yes, sir.
tell a joke, and he start laughing
Yeah,
before he could
himself.
tell the punchline.
So you really laughing at him laughing?
He was funny. I loved him tell a joke because he never told a punchline.
They be taking the body up that church, and somebody slipped
Oh,
on the
Lord.
wet day.
Yeah,
And Miss Blue used to be in that church when somebody died. Go down there. The house right here I was born in.
Oh, okay.
Let me show you where I was born in, Steve. Steve?
Yeah.
This is my grandmama house. See this big gray house?
Uh-huh.
My grandmama bought that house making $2 a week. Bought both of these houses.
Wow.
Now, I was born, Oliver was born right here. See this house right here, Steve?
Yeah.
I was born right here. All my brothers and sisters was born right here.
That's where Cheryl stayed now.
Cheryl stayed there, the one that do the catering.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
where
Cheryl.
stayed.
Uh-huh.
Oh, number one.
Yeah, and it's a family that lives in there, but the pole that comes from the second floor is still in the house.
Gotta be kidding.
And Dora brings out the story that when this was a part of the Louisiana Territory, when they sold this part of the country to the United States, it was done under a treaty called the Onassis-Adams Treaty. Onassis was the general for the Spanish. Samuel Adams, John Adams was Secretary of State at the time. But the whole key to the treaty was that treaty said in order for y'all to buy this, Creoles must be recognized as free individuals. They will have all the rights of whites, meaning they could own property, they could become educated, they could have their own businesses. All these things were against the law for blacks. Blacks, it was against the law to be educated. Blacks couldn't own property. Blacks had no rights. Creoles had all the rights and privileges of a white person under that treaty. So that's kind of what created the disparity between blacks and Creoles up until 1964.
Really?
Because to be honest with you, if I'd had that opportunity, I'd have been Creole
Let me ask you
too.
a question. Let me ask you a question. You remember Hilliard, Esau's brother?
Yes,
You remember he was murdered?
it lived on Belsaw
Bellsaw Avenue, right
Right.
down by the
I didn't know he was murdered.
He was murdered, yeah.
in the house.
In the house. They
I
found
remember
him-
that. Yeah, that's
They
in the
found a
60s.
knife in his back.
Right.
He had a problem, you know.
Right.
But now, how did they characterize Esau Neal?
Then in 1896, he went to Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, becomes a physician. Comes back, opens up his doctor's office upstairs. So he's got a doctor's office upstairs, a drugstore downstairs, and his home was over here in this lot. Okay? White Citizen Council comes to him and they probably say Roger, I'm sure they didn't call him Dr. William. You need to put a sign up here that says colored. Because, this was during the Jim Crow days. So, him being the independent, smart person that he was, he found a picture of himself and blew it up about half the size of that poster, put it in the window. He's a brown skinned guy. He said, now, do you think they'll know I'm colored now?
Yeah, did you know Willie worked here?
Yeah, the oyster
Arthur
shucker.
Schuckman.
Willie and I went
Yeah.
to Orange
We
School
had met his
together.
birthday party.
A drugstore, a doctor's office, a mortuary business, and a newspaper office. This is one of the newest restaurants in town called Southern National. It's owned by African American over to the left. Real nice upscale place. And there's our marker right here for the cathedral. We just passed it. The cathedral is on the tour because they help facilitate the financing of St. Martin de Porres Hospital
Really?
down on Virginia.
I know. My daddy died there.
Okay, and so that hospital was opened in 1850. Hello? Yeah, I'm on the tour. What's up? All right, thank you. that hospital, the financing was started by the church. They assisted with that, you know, and it stayed open until 1970
Is that right?
when it closed at that point. And
This is amazing, even come down here like this. You been born and raised here, I found some things I didn't know. I really enjoyed it.
Most people don't know their city.
I don't know it, I mean, a lot of stuff you tell me on too. But behind Orange School, that creek's running back there. That 3 Mile Creek.
yeah,
Don't they run behind Orange School?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna clean that up. They cleaned it up from around Roger Williams Project
Yeah, yeah, that creek.
all the way almost to Spring Hill, and they've got sidewalks and bicycle routes all
Yeah,
through that area.
Well, that 3 Mile Creek behind Orange School, it was like you say, people could live back there.
You're gonna see a mural. Y'all see it on that wall?
Oh yeah.
That's one of our newest markers, and it's called Hidden Figures, kind of a takeoff of the movie. And this was done in conjunction with United Mobile, and this was their project, their leadership class of 2017. This is what they wanted to do, was to recognize individuals from Mobile. So the first lady is Dr. Regina Benjamin.
Oh yeah.
And she was, of course, the Surgeon General during Barack Obama's
Oh, yeah,
administration.
Yeah, my wife know her.
Okay, and she has a clinic out in Bayou LaBattery. Gives back to the community a lot. The next guy is Dr. Lonnie Johnson. He went to Williamson High School.
That's my cousin.
Really? Okay. And of course, you know, he used to blow up the lab all the
Yeah.
time out there.
Yeah.
And he was the inventor of the Super Soaker
Oh,
gun.
yeah.
So I understand he's written a significant check to Williamson. And he's just got all kinds of stuff going on in his lab. And everybody loves Lonnie because he's such a down-to-earth person. When you meet him, you would never know he's of the status that he is, because he's just an everyday kind of guy.
He's a jokester.
And the last guy is Major General Gary Cooper, who's from Mobile. He went to Heart of Mary, then he went to Notre Dame, and then he joined the Marines. And when he joined the Marines, they wanted to make him a supply officer. And he says, "Oh no, I don't have all this education to be a supply officer."
Really?
And so then he ultimately he became an infantry leader, and he was the first African American ever to lead an infantry, which is like 10,000 men.
Y'all heard about that?
And then he retired and became a. They brought him back from in the Air Force as a deputy administrator. And then he became ambassador to Jamaica. And then he came back to Alabama, and he became, he was head of the Department of Human and Resources for the state of Alabama. Then he ran for U.S. representatives for the state, represented, I think, District 98. Then he became president and CEO of Commonwealth National Bank. Retired from there. Now he is just runs the family's funeral home, Christian Benevolent. Okay. Sanger Theater.
Oh,
You know, we couldn't walk in this door.
Oh, you had to
I know I had to go around on that.
Go around on the other side.
Go in the
Five
bottom.
states.
Go in the
Yeah.
Five
bottom.
states.
So they still have like plays and concerts and things of that nature. No movies. Every now and then they might show one if it's
I mean,
something
on
special.
Saturday morning,
Yeah.
we needed that Mavis bread wrapper and go down and see the Lone Ranger.
Okay.
You remember that?
No, I don't remember
Yes, sir.
that.
All you needed was a bread wrapper.
I don't remember that.
All you needed was a bread wrapper.
So this is where you would come around and go up to the
did.
balcony.
Sure did.
Sure did.
And so this is the last marker. This is Wallace Turnage. There used to be a home on this site before the Sanger Theater was here. And the guy that lived here, his name was Collier Minge. He was a merchant. And a lot of horses. And he owned horses. And there was this one guy by the name of Wallace Turnage. And Turnage lived in North Mississippi. And he tried to run away 4 times. Each time he ran away, he went north. And they would catch him. And they would bring him back and beat him unmercifully, okay? And so finally his owner had some sympathy and brought him down to the slave trading mart around on Royal Street. And when he did that, he auctioned him off, and the guy that lived here bought him. And so his job used to be just to walk the horses. And he's walking one of the horses down Dolphin Street one day, and the horse gets away. He couldn't catch the horse. Everybody tried. So he came back home and told Miss Mims that the horse ran away. She said, well, Wallace, you go downstairs because you're going to need to wait on Collier to come home. He's going to want to talk to you. Well, he knew what that meant. He was not going to take another beat. So he bolts out the door. Instead of going north to time, he goes south. When he goes south, he runs into the water. He runs all the way down the Dog River. He crosses Dog River. He runs all the way to Foul River. He crosses Foul River. He goes all the way down to Dolphin Island. Couldn't go no further. But he could see the Union soldiers over at the fort. But he couldn't figure out how to get over there because the water is 40, 50 feet deep. The waves are 25 feet high. And so he's run through water moccasins, snakes, alligators, all kinds of bugs, you name it, okay? Do you know what no-see-ums are?
No.
You ever heard of no-see-ums? Well, you know, like when you used to go to Malu Island to Chastain Beach and them places, you'd have fun all day home. And then when you got home at night, you'd be like,
Yeah.
I said, what was that? That would be the no-see-ums.
I didn't do that.
You don't see them, but they've been biting you all day. Yeah.
No see him.
No see them. So anyway, that's my one joke, y'all. So anyway,
Don't see 'em.
finally after about 4 or 5 days, he sees this little 8-foot boat. It's an abandoned boat. He jumps in there. He jumps in that boat, and he gets 2 branches from a tree, and he takes off trying to get over there to the Union soldiers. And this Union boat comes along and sees him. They think they're hallucinating him being out there in that water in that little 8-foot boat. They bring him aboard, take him over to the fort, get him healthy, and they said, Wallace, we're going to get you free, set you free, but we need 2 things from you. Either you go back to Mobile and plot out everything the Confederate soldiers are doing, because there was like 10 to 12,000 Confederate soldiers in Mobile during that time, or tell us what you know now. Wallace said, I'm going to tell you what I know now, because he's getting out of here. This is as close as he's gotten to have his freedom.
Why do you want to talk?
He wanted to talk. So he told them everything that he knew. They set him free. They get him to North Carolina, where he meets his mother and his sister that he had not seen in 20 years.
You gotta be kidding.
Spends some quality time with them. Then he ends up in New York with his niece. And his niece put him up. He stayed with her, and he had just had regular jobs like working in retail stores and hotels and things of that nature. He lived a good life, and then ultimately he dies of like some type of kidney infection.
Back then, it knew.
Right. And so most people didn't know that Wallace could read and write, okay? And he had kept notes all during his life of his experience in Mobile, Mississippi. And this guy writes this book called A Slave No More from the notes that he had written
You
and
gotta
kept.
be kidding.
And so the book is called A Slave No More, and he is one of 2 men that got their freedom by going south. The other guy was in North Carolina. And so as a result of that, that site is now on the National Underground Railroad.
Is that right?
Yep, it's being acknowledged, and it's the only site in Alabama that's on the Underground Railroad.
I want to see your brother. I haven't seen him in I don't know when.
He retired, you know, he was a pharmacist. He ran the drugstore after my dad retired. And then they finally closed it around 2000.
What is he doing now?
He retired. You know, he ran the drugstore, and then he went to work for Rite Aid and CVS, and then ultimately to a company that just sold to like nursing homes.
Okay.
And he retired last year. Yep.
Yeah. Now, which one of that was running for office?
That was my cousin. That was Carlos. That was Doris' brother.
Okay, okay.
He's an attorney. He has a practice. His office is out on Dolphin and I-65.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what he's at. Yeah, I like to see what. See, I didn't know him.
Okay. Yeah, he was young. Carlos is 13 years younger than me. He was
Yeah, well, see,
giant
that's why I didn't
later.
know him. I didn't
Right.
know him.
Right.
I knew your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I tell you, it goes a long way. People
Yeah.
don't know what we had back then.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Anytime the drugstore, the liver paint of a
Now
dog
this is
shirt.
something I need to tell you about that I didn't tell you. It's trivia. But you know where the cathedral was?
Yeah.
From the cathedral up to the Singer Theater, Contour Street, which is the street we just came down.
Yeah.
Over to St. Francis used to be a cemetery called Campo Santiago.
Well, what they do at the cemetery?
Well, they moved some of the bodies to Church Street.
Oh, the old church.
Now,
Street
what
right
year
up.
was that?
1847 is when it closed. Now, they say they saw bodies popping up until 1890 as they started doing construction down
Is
there.
that right?
Mm-hmm. So they moved most of the bodies, but those they didn't move, they were still under there, and they were, you know, because see, keep in mind where the city started from, right?
Fort Conde.
Those guys, Ira and Villambo, probably never even thought that the city would grow that far.
Yeah.
So when they started putting the cemetery there, it was a long ways from the city, because the city was in those walls, right?
Is that right?
And so, but they didn't probably realize that Dolphin Street was going to be the main thoroughfare and grow like it did. And so then they upended that
Is that right?
that cemetery and started putting businesses there, and they moved most of the bodies, but those they didn't move, bad
That's a
news.
question.
Mhm.
Isn't there a certain clause when they cannot disturb a cemetery?
Yeah, but you know, a lot of those were Creoles and African Americans.
So they didn't give a damn. Yeah, but that law about
A lot of them were French too, so they probably moved the ones that,
Yeah, the law
They
said
knew it
rest
wasn't gonna be
in
no
peace.
stink about it.
The
yeah,
law said rest in peace, and that's what they meant.
yeah.
Yeah, well.
But
Yeah.
this has been a wonderful
Thank you, thank you.
man. And then we park right here.
Okay, I'm gonna pull over.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull over right up here.
We have had a wonderful experience today.
Okay, well, good, good. I'm gonna
This
just.
has been a
Oh, I can
wonderful-
slide right in here. I didn't see this
is,
stuff.
this is nice. This has been a great experience.
Well, good, good.
I
I'm
wanna
glad.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.